Hi everybody and welcome to today's session. I'm really pleased to have with me the man with a plan when it comes to all things web design. I've got Luke Summerfield on the line. How are you doing, Luke?
I'm doing well. I always have, agencies always have a place in my heart. Before I worked at HubSpot, I worked at a partner agency for 3.5 years. And so I love agency life. I love working with clients, and anytime I get to chat with them, it's just the best. I love it.
So you've seen things from both sides, from the agency world and from the power that is HubSpot.
And the client world, yeah. Before the agency, I was at a manufacturer doing marketing, so for sports equipment. So it was, I've seen all the different worlds. Probably anyone listening here probably have some empathy to some of the work that you're doing.
No, spot on. No, I really appreciate you coming here today, Luke. And one of the things we've been talking about a lot is, I suppose, this whole sort of shift in buyer behavior. You know, we're seeing across all the years that I've been in this industry, and even before, the way buyers are interacting with companies today has changed. Some of the simple things, you know, like the changes in devices, like the movement from text to visual to video. We're seeing a lot of things. But from your perspective, what have been the big things in the last couple of years, or what we're seeing coming up that's really made a change to the whole world of design?
Well, we're talking about in the context of the website experience that you have with your company. But let's take a step back really quick, because this story that we're talking about has already played out. And it's played out in another industry, the software industry. If we look at the software industry, where the industry was back in the 90s, some of you listening to this maybe don't remember, but there were these things called CD-ROMs. It was like this plastic disc that came with software on it, and you had to kind of treat it like almost like your children. You had to keep it safe and clean it and put it in a safe spot, or it might have problems. And that was like the standard for delivering software in the 90s. But what happened was, well, behind the scenes, there was 3 fundamental shifts happening in the software industry that totally revolutionized the way that software was done. The first one was a technology shift, where servers became cheaper. It was easier to collect data. You could continuously, improve the software and just have it online versus having to ship these CDs. That informed a shift in process, how software companies built peak performing software, collecting real user data, seeing how people are interacting with it, personalizing like we talked about, and changing the way that they built around the customer. And then the third one was the culture shift. It was a way that these software companies were thinking about how to grow a business using software. And all of that came together. The shifts came together to basically spark the SaaS revolution, which is now the standard for software. Like, I don't know if you ask someone, when was the last time you bought a CD? Most people won't even know what that is. It's now the standard for how people think about it. And so when you go and you use services like Slack, when you use services like Google or Facebook or even HubSpot, you'll notice that the way that they market to you, the way that they tailor the experience around you has shifted, because they now have those three culture, process, and technology shifts. So that was interesting in the 90s, because it put a lot of companies out of business, companies that did not make that shift, and companies that could not adapt around the customers. And what we're seeing now is that the companies, as you said, the companies that are these like breakout stars, the Slacks of the world and the Facebook, Google, all of that, they are what we call experience disruptors. Yes. They build a phenomenal product, but then what they do is they figure out how do they improve the experience on top of it. And that experience is the reason that you use Uber versus a taxi. Both of those services get you from point A to point B, but it's the experience and the ease and comfort that you get through an Uber or a Lyft that you don't get with a taxi. So that's what we're seeing. Now, that shift that we saw in the technology software world is happening in the web design world. And so if there's nothing that you all take away from today's talk, I want you to take away that the world of web design is changing, and it's changing in those same 3 areas. It's changing in the technology that's available for us as companies, as marketers, for building those types of experiences. It's changing in the process that that technology enables, how we go about building these websites, how do we tailor it around our customers, and it's shifting again in how businesses think about the website as a tool for growth. And so, of course, we could talk about all of those, but that's really the shift that we're seeing today in the web world. It's going to be very, very different in the next few years, my friends.
And if you look at those companies that are seeing this marketplace, this SaaS as a website as a tool for growth, what type of industries are actually getting to the forefront of that? Who moved first when it came to, right, we're getting onto the SaaS platform, we're getting our website in the cloud with HubSpot?
Well, I mean, you see it across all kinds of different industries. Of course, if some of these folks are a little ahead of the beat, if you look at how companies like HubSpot, Facebook, Google, I keep mentioning those because those are the household names, but it's really any of these like kind of unicorn peak performing like companies, the way that they build software. So the industry like that I would look at is Silicon Valley and software. The way that they build software, they've replicated that exact same mentality and process and thinking about their website as a piece of their software, as one of their products. So you as a company listening to this, you have products and services that you're building. You have maybe product managers or people who are always trying to improve those products and services. And it's like a living, breathing thing. I would encourage you to think about your website as one of your products in your product line. And it might be a free product. You might not charge anything for it, but It still requires the development. But what we're seeing is, especially in this day and age with the global economy or the global state of affairs, companies are now turning their website into a paid product. They're selling online courses. They're selling membership subscription sites. And so it turns into a product in and of itself, just like all the other products that they offer. And so I think the software world had a little bit of a head start because they were already doing a lot of this stuff with their actual software products. And then that bled into, again, kind of the culture. This goes back to the culture shift that is happening in the web world. The culture shift, again, is thinking about the website as a product and that it's actually an extension of one of your product lines.
Well, it's really interesting because the topic of culture, I mean, we've talked about this before. It used to be that a website and a design project was kind of thrown over into IT and a bit of marketing. Now what we're kind of seeing, and particularly with our clients and even ourselves, we've got a whole lot of different stakeholders who want to be involved in this process. You know, we know it's not just a destination that's a nice looking brochure with information. It's actually a proactive, personalized tool where the sales department can really utilize the content, understand the customer journey. We're also seeing that the customer service folks, in fact, relying on this to point people to the quickest source of information to solve the problems they've got there and then. So there's a whole lot of different departments, but I guess you're seeing this, and this is why it's turning into this kind of, I suppose, mission critical operating platform across the whole business.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if you look at how these modern companies are thinking about their website, we already talked about thinking it like a product, but they think of it like a growth investment. Traditionally a website's seen as, like you were mentioning, a business expense, kind of a static brochure, kind of a necessary thing to do. But the modern way of thinking of it is that it's a growth investment. As you improve the website, as you add in new sections, it helps your flywheel move faster and faster and faster. And that flywheel incorporates all the different, it's a tool for all the different departments in your company to leverage to hit their goals. And so let me give you like two examples. This is straight from HubSpot.
Yep.
One of our goals was for our number one thing at HubSpot for us to grow is just like a growth goal is to hire good people. That was like period. Didn't matter how many sales we had. If we didn't have the right people to like help like implement the stuff, we were having problems. So we looked at how do we use the website as a tool to generate amazing candidates, a big candidate pipeline, educate them about what it's like to work at HubSpot, and then get them in the actual like recruiting funnels. We built like an inbound recruiting, an inbound talent funnel. We built out an entire section on the site that was really well put together. And that was an investment in the website that helped the HR, recruiting team hit their goals, which helped the company hit their goals. The second example, which you mentioned, is customer service. Every single time, we have awesome customer service and we love talking to customers, of course, but it's kind of a pain in the butt if you hit a problem and you got to pick up a phone and call in to the customer line, right? People don't want to disrupt their day to have to call. So what we asked ourselves is, how could we use the website as a tool to get the answers to customers quicker, faster, easier, so that they don't even have to pick up the phone in the first place? On the HubSpot side, it's going to save us a lot of cost in support calls. Yep. And so we built a lot of, there was a lot of investment in our website, in our knowledge bases, in our online chats, in all of that, to build a website experience that solves those questions before they even have to call. We saw, a drop in number of calls and savings there. So again, those are just, I think, I have a marketing background. A lot of times marketing is the one who kind of owns the website. We have kind of blinders on the extent that a website can impact our business. Mm-hmm. And so of course it's important. We got to use the website to grow that part of the business, the visitors, leads, helping sales close deals. But there's lots of other ways that these companies are thinking about leveraging the website to grow the business.
So the good news is, for a lot of companies, is they can split their budget.
It's true. It's very true. Yeah, it's a lot easier. And at the end of the day, again, the folks that think about their website as like a product and as like a piece of software that they can use, you get lots of people that'll help pitch in for particular initiatives to grow that.
No, and it's, I must admit, even from our point of view, when we do provide these services to our clients, we have always gone to the marketing and look at the marketing budget, and that's where the pot sat. But as we've actually shifted more into sales enablement, and we're now doing onboarding in terms of how sales reps can use all these tools throughout the web design process, it's actually brought in the head of sales. It's brought in the directors of sales to the conversation. And it's always, it doesn't surprise me, because I started, I did 10 years in software sales, but sales always seem to have the bigger budget.
Oh, yeah.
They have the bigger budget. And it's a really interesting mix now when we're going into those conversations.
Oh, yeah. And there's so many cool, going back to personalization and thinking the website as a product, there's so many interesting things that technology these days, CMSs, enable you to build these kind of like powerful web appy personalized experiences. And one of those things, for example, is you could build, account-based marketing is such a popular thing these days, especially with larger enterprise sales. You can build these custom portals that you can give people login access to. These are prospects, give prospects login access to. They log in, the whole portal is customized around them, what they're interested in, along with extending that out to the front of the website. And those all become sales enablement tools that the sales team can leverage in the sales process. They can get prospects into. And so, yeah, I think there's more and more these days that we need to start thinking about, again, other parts of the business like sales that the website can be used to build these experiences. Yeah,
and for all the marketers listening, I know they've always got a challenge of, okay, how do I get this budget approved to do this next project, to get this next website and roll it out across the company? But I guess what's difficult is showing the return on investment from a marketing perspective sometimes, because you're looking at, okay, are we doing a content marketing plan? We've got a load of content to create. We need to get our rankings up, get our search authority there. It's a long wait to sometimes see that ROI, but actually bringing in customer service to these elements and bringing in sales and proactive sales approach, utilizing part of that design process, actually the return on investment could become a lot quicker for a lot of these companies, can't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's I'll give you an example. We recently relaunched a site on HubSpot called inspired.hubspot.com. Inspired.hubspot.com. And this is like
I'll put it in the meeting notes.
Okay, cool. This is like a showcase of all the cool work that's being done around the world on the CMS. And so it was an interesting project because it actually was, as cool as it is from like organic lead generation source, people searching for like manufacturing websites or something like that, and they stumble on these listings. We get quite a bit of that. The focus of the project was actually turning it into a sales enablement play, because every single call that we got, someone said, hey, we want to see someone that looks like us, or has a similar need that's already using your product and service. And the sales reps were kind of grasping, like they didn't have a really easy way to narrow in on exactly the types of sites that matched the person that they were talking to, going back to personalized experience. And so we built it. All the goals were 100% around enabling the sales reps to easily find those examples like that. And so the budget was split. The budget, going back to budget was split through half from the marketing team, half from the sales team, and they kicked in a little of each because it was help them both get to their goals. And we launched the thing, and it's just been wildly successful. In the last month, we now have hundreds of entries, and the sales reps use it every single day. We built a Slack bot integration so that right out of the Slack they can search the website and pull in examples from the HubSpot CMS website. And so it's just it's turned into such a useful sales enablement resource. But again, the goal was 100% sales enablement, and the budget was split between the departments, and it just made everyone win, at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's good. And it also helps with that sales and marketing alignment. I know when I was talking to Dan Tower with his marketing approach, and we talked a bit about that, but I guess it really helps to get those departments working together.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we've talked all about this in terms of who's kind of using it, who's involved, stakeholders wise, and why there has been this shift, I guess, into the SaaS world and all the various elements around it. What about the process? How has that changed in terms of people moving to the cloud now? What happened and what's happening now?
Yeah, again, we're seeing these three shifts. One is culture, which is what we've been talking about. The second shift is process, and the third is technology. And the technology enables the process, right? So traditionally, if we look at, again, as someone who came from the agency world building websites for clients, the traditional process typically is a very business-focused strategy. It's like a me. Why are we better than our competitors? Why should you care about us? It's a very ego-centric type of thing. And the reality is, these days, the customer doesn't care. They want a tailored experience around them, not a tailored experience around the company. And the second problem was that the traditional web process is typically a huge project. Anyone listening to this who went through a website redesign, I guarantee this sounds familiar. It was 3, 6, 9 months long, which is a huge time investment, and not to mention capital investment. It probably went late, delivered late. It probably launched over budget, and everyone was just so frustrated about the whole process at the end. And it's funny that we've just accepted that as that's the way you go about building one of these websites. And then inevitably you launch the thing, and you're like, all right, that was it. I'm sick of this website thing. I'm frustrated with it. I'm going to move on to all this other stuff. And the website sits and decays for 2 years, very much like the CD software world, where they'd launch Microsoft 95 and 2 years later, 98 and 2 years later. And it was just we've learned in the software world to build peak performing software. That type of a process of these monster builds, these big launches, then set it and forget it is just not the way to do it. And so the modern process of web design starts with a customer-focused strategy. This is where you get an empathetic understanding of the world of your customer, and then weave the website in as a part of that journey. And it's subtle, but it's true. It's there's one approach, the traditional approach of we build this thing about our company, and we're going to just throw it at our customers, and hopefully it sticks somewhere. Or we go to their world, we understand their world, and we find the subtle nuances of their journey and their world, of where they're struggling and what they're trying to do. And we kind of weave the website in as a part of that journey, which again goes back to the experience disruption side of things. From there, once you have that view of the world, you need to build a site that looks and performs better than what you have today, but is just a starting point. You know that it's not going to be perfect. You know that you need to improve it, just like software launches, and it improves over time. And so we call that a launchpad website. It's like the starting point of all your improvement efforts. And from there, once it's live, again, the technology enables us to have really rich understandings of the world of these customers. What are they clicking on? What are they interacting in? What stage of the buying process are they? What persona are they? And so you can continuously improve the site. You can build new features for other departments. You can build new customer experiences. So you can really continuously improve the site over time. And again, invest into that asset, get the flywheel going, and turn the website into a tool for growth versus a set it and forget it digital brochure. And so that's really the modern way that a lot of folks are going about it. We at HubSpot, we packaged this culture shift, the process shift into a methodology. We call that methodology growth-driven design. We have certifications on it. I know you at your agency are all about growth-driven design and work with clients on it. And so again, it's just all these concepts that we've been talking about packaged into a system, and that's really the modern system to use.
So just going back on the element around the customer focus strategy, and it makes perfect sense, of course. We're talking about a launchpad site here, and businesses can be at different stages of their maturity, of course. If you're a business and you can sell to not just one customer type, but maybe you've got 3, 6, 9 different personas throughout the sales process, what's the general approach to that? I mean, we're talking about gradual improvements, using the data, having a launchpad website. But if me with company ABC have 10 people I like to sell to, how do we go about looking at that and the customer focus piece at the start?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing is you're probably going to, if you're like most companies, like you said, you have different personas. Each persona has things that they care about, and they have different journeys that they go on in their lives to solve that. And your product or service, hopefully, is a part of that journey at a certain point. The problem is, it's one of the reasons that these projects spiral out of control is you can't do it all out of the beginning. You can't, there's no way that you can build a website that addresses every single persona at every single point of their journey. So what we talk about in growth-driven design is focus. Let's look at the highest impact personas and stages and start there and really do those well, really tailor the experience there, knowing that once we launch and we get into continuous improvement, then we can go to the next set of high impact personas or stages. And so that's one of the things as you come out of the strategy phase is to have all those things identified, have a journey map of where they go through, and then be able to determine based off your business goals, like here are the personas that result in this amount of average selling price, lifetime value, and start to prioritize, okay, we're going to focus on these 3 personas. We know we have 8, but we're going to start with 3. The other 5, we're going to do some light content on. And then leverage technology, like that's the last shift that we're going to talk about, the technology to build targeted, dynamic, personalized experiences for each one of those. And if you do the work properly in the strategy phase, you're going to know exactly who they are, what they care about, the positioning, messaging that you need to talk to, what offers are interesting to them, and then leverage that technology to build it. Start with the key ones for the launchpad, and then just know once it's launched, doesn't stop there. We're going to continue to work on tailoring out the experiences for each of the personas.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very common thing where companies do race ahead to get a website up there, to get it live, to get some collateral there, and then they move on to this kind of persona development and strategy, which effectively is backwards. That they need to sort of take a step back and start with the persona research, look at the key KPIs for the business departments, the revenue goals, and then mold that into the, as you say, weave in the web design.
Yeah, it's the difference of a business-focused strategy versus a customer. Business-focused strategy, again, let's build a website and we'll just kind of toss it at our customers and hopefully it sticks somewhere, versus let's meet them where they're at and understand that world and then build it around them and tailor it around them, which is exactly how the software companies do it, right? So it's like this story is already there. It's like now we're just learning it in the web world.
Sure. And just going back to the word launchpad, because I know from personal experience that sometimes it takes a bit of education to get across to clients what a launchpad is. It's like, well, I don't want a launchpad. I want a full website. Why are you only giving me a launchpad? And I guess, as part of that kind of question there, for companies who are building a website from scratch, hey, it all sounds pretty easy. We get a launchpad, we build on it, we continuously improve. What about those companies who just need to change their website? They've got a lot of content, a lot of data. How do we go from what might be quite a large website into this launchpad? Yeah,
I think there's some misconceptions. I think people kind of like jump to conclusions pretty quickly. What we need to start with is what's the goal of a launchpad website? The goal is to build a site that looks and performs better than what you have today, but do it quickly and get it out into the world, right? So we can collect data and make more informed decisions. So the question is how do you build a website that looks and performs better, but do it quickly? And I think the misconception or the assumption is that the only way to do that is to cut down and pare down the size of the site. And the reality is yes, of course, if you have less pages, less sections, like it's a lot easier to do that, but that's not the best path to take for a lot of companies. You could have a large enterprise company that's got multiple locations in multiple places, and they need to take a very different approach to building out what their Launchpad site is. So in the certification, we talk about 5 different approaches. And you can kind of use some of these approaches in tandem, but it's really, again, where you need to work with a good strategic partner like yourselves at an agency that can guide you on what's the best approach for our particular scenario. There's no like cookie cutter formula of like do X, Y, and Z for your site, because every site is different, every business is different. And so I'll give you one example really, really quickly of one of the approaches. So the other approach is for you to take a step back and look at the format on which work is getting done. So you're doing the exact same work, you're getting the exact same end deliverable, but how is your team going about building those? And if I look back to my days at the agency, if I take one of the parts of the website process, like wireframing, for example, what would happen is I did all the UX at the agency. So I would sit down after all the strategy and I'd start mapping out these like structures of these wireframes. I'd do all the pages, maybe took me 4 or 5 days. And then I would send it over to the client. Or in this case, maybe a client would have to send it to a stakeholder. And, you know, that client is out of town and then they get back and then they have questions and then they got to share it with their team. And eventually 3, 4, 5 days later, you meet to answer questions. And what I'm getting at is that this process of how we build those wireframes, the deliverable is the same. We want to sign off on the wireframes to move forward. But this asynchronous back and forth causes a lot of confusion and requires, let's say, 5 business days. That's conservative, but let's say 5 business days of back and forth to get that deliverable done. So what we talk about in Growth Gym Design is like, is that the right approach for completing those? How about, what if we got in a room together for a half a day, got whiteboard, or if it's virtual, you could use even PowerPoint, and work as a team to in a half-day workshop format with the goal of leaving that workshop with a sign-off from all the stakeholders. So you got to involve the stakeholders and get them in a workshop. Now you've cut down 5 business days to a half of a business day. And if you find by leveraging the format of a workshop versus the format of this asynchronous back and forth email chain and context switching, right? So that's shrinking it down. That's one area of the process that you can leverage workshops as a format. There's other areas within the process. And so that's where you start getting the same deliverables. I would argue better deliverables, because when you get everyone on the same page, and you get the creative people who are good workshop facilitators can really get good creative ideas rolling, you're going to end up with a better end deliverable, and you get it done in less time. Now, the last thing I'll say on this is, like, a lot of times people are like, well, I can't like get everyone in a room for a half a day. It's just too time consuming, blah, blah, blah. I guarantee that the back and forth asynchronous context switching, confusion, miscommunication is eating up more actual hours on the clock than if you just got everyone in a room and just cranked out in a half a day. It's just, when you look at how people work and the way that the work naturally happens, you're going to save net amount of time by just getting together, cranking it out and moving on than like bouncing around between all these different projects and between different stakeholders and all this stuff. So
it definitely does. And I know from our own experience, because we do a lot of these workshops, and it's amazing how sometimes we're sitting in a room with people from different departments in a company, and it becomes very apparent they haven't really talked to each other for quite a long time. And all of a sudden we start with an agenda, but then it actually turns into almost a strategy meeting for them. You know, the sales, the marketing, their partnerships. All of a sudden it's, okay, I see how this could work. And it really, I mean, as far as actually proving ROI and getting sort of benefits for this kind of a project, it's effectively just a case of listening, understanding, and knowing where the best points are to strike in terms of where the revenue is going to come back, or where the customer satisfaction is going to increase, or even where the reduction in operational costs might be.
Yeah. Yeah. Workshops are magical. I think in another life or in a future life, I'll do workshops full time because they are just so magical, and probably a whole separate conversation. But again, going back to the Launchpad sites, that's a second approach on how you speed up, how you build a site that looks and performs better than what you have today, but do it quickly. And so there's 3 more approaches that we talk about in the cert. And you as a company and as an agency advising can pick the best path to do that. And one that fits really well and will get you in a good spot.
No, it makes sense. And we've also had quite a lot of experience doing sort of the growth-driven design, slightly different, just depending on each client. But I think the key for us has always been, it has been flexible, it has been efficient. And like I always say, a very simple example, it's like going to the gym. You can't just do it for summertime. You need to keep going back. So at Christmas, you don't look like you've had the full turkey. But
you can't just take a pill. You can't just take a pill and it magically happens.
Exactly. And
there's no one growth hack that makes all the magic happen.
Well, exactly it. And it's all about continuous improvement, adapting it, and keep tweaking it. So we certainly live by that kind of approach. So look, I mean, if I sort of move slightly further down the track here in terms of, we have got a process to go through. We've gone through the strategy. We've gone through the Launchpad website. We're really now starting to look at the technology, particularly. I mean, what options are out there for making all this happen?
Yeah, so this is, I think, important when we look at the selection of technology. Again, this is the third shift that we're seeing in the web world. We already saw it in the software world. Everything that we talked about up to this point, the culture shift, the process shift, those should be criteria that when you purchase a CMS, when you purchase CMS as a content management system, it's where you host your website, kind of build and optimize your site. The CMS you choose should be informed on what is going to enable those things that we previously talked about to become a reality. How are we going to get a customer like what tooling, what features, what functionality do we need to be able to build these disruptive, personalized experiences that we can continuously improve and have the right information to make those focused priority decisions. When we look at website technology to talk about the shift that we're seeing, there's a really good quote by a guy, Clay Shirky, who's a NYU professor, and he says, technology doesn't get truly interesting until it becomes almost invisible. And when we go back to some of these experience disruptors and these high growth companies, what they're doing, Google, Amazon with Alexa, Google with Google Home, like eventually you don't even notice that the technology is there and how complicated this stuff on our phones actually is, but you don't even feel it. It's just intuitive and easy. The problem that we see with in the CMS world is that as a business grows, it demands more out of the website. You have to add in new features, new functionality, new departments, all the stuff that we talked about, new customer data, all this. And the system starts to become very clunky. It doesn't become invisible. It actually becomes the opposite. Traditional CMSs, we call them traditional CMSs that have these problems, they are very high maintenance, where you are having to maintenance either the servers, you're having to maintenance and update plugins and a theme and the core software, and you're spending a ton of time on conflicts between all the plugins and resolving those. Then you got to add in security, and you got to layer in security and figure out hacking and backups. And what it does is you as a company shift your focus away from your customers to focus on your systems. And you're spending all your time, energy, and resources on your systems, not on your customers. Which is no way to create these disruptive experiences. The second thing that we see with traditional CMSs is that because they get so clunky, and because a lot of these legacy CMSs have kind of like just been built up over the years, they're very much create what we call gatekeepers, meaning as a marketing team, we have initiatives, we have things we need to do, we need to create content, we need to do all this stuff. And with these traditional CMSs, it's nearly impossible for us to get our work done. We almost always have to go to a developer to do anything on the site. And so the developer, of course, they got their own priorities. They're in a different sprint cycle. Then maybe 2 weeks later, they prioritize it. And a month later, maybe you get your work done. And in a world of today, we know that being agile is so important. And so we want, traditional CMSs very much have gatekeepers. modern CMSs, if I actually back up a little bit, modern CMSs, that high maintenance, high security, modern CMSs are built on a SaaS infrastructure. Just like every other piece of software in this world, for some reason, the CMS world is still stuck in non-SaaS days. Modern CMSs are built on SaaS, where maintenance, security, updates, like all that stuff is just taken care of for you, and then that way it frees your time up to focus on more valuable, more impactful user experience type of things. To the gatekeeper conversation, modern CMSs are built in a way that the developers can create an experience for the marketing team to just get their work done. Like just enable them to get their work done. And then that frees the developers time up to build new things like customer onboarding, these member login sites, like all these more complex value, almost like web app-y type experiences on the site. The last two things that I'll mention, and I know we've been talking a little bit about it, is that whole one size fits none that comes along with a traditional CMS, because traditional CMSs have kind of lived in their own world over here, away from your analytics, away from your CRM where all your customer data is, away from a lot of these systems. It makes it nearly impossible to create, as we talked about, those different personas, different journey stages, type of experience on the site. If you're a first-time visitor on a site, you get the same experience as if you're a lifelong customer, or you're one of your dealers, or one of your, buy this business units, all the exact same one-size-fits-none experience. Modern CMSs enable everything we've talked about. It makes it easy for your marketing team and your development team to build those personalized experiences for the stages and the personas and everything we talked about. And because those CMSs kind of live in their own world, going back to ROI, it's really hard to tie back like, hey, we built these pages, we invested in these sections, we built out this web app on top of our CMS. How is that impacting results? And they make it really fuzzy, which makes it hard for your marketing team to know, where should I focus my time and energy, what's working, what's not working. And it makes it really hard to turn to your CMO and show, hey, we invested this much time and energy into this asset. Here's what that return was. So modern CMSs really are connected with your CRM, with all your tooling, to make it really easy to report on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and a quick win we found certainly is that sort of attribution reporting where, okay, maybe a lead didn't originate from filling out a form on your website, but tell you what, after they've been speaking to a sales rep, they've been back to the website, they've interacted with content, they've done something else, and then they've come back to the sales rep, picked up the conversation, and then actually, you know what? Marketing can now get a thumbs up for saying, yes, we've actually helped nurture that lead through the sales cycle, even if it didn't come from an initial phone call.
Yeah, so, and it makes you make such smarter decisions on where to invest your time. Like, our time is our number one resource that we have, and as a marketing team, you only have limited amount of time. And so if you have a bunch of pages of content, a bunch of assets, the question comes like, where do I invest my time to improve, to build? And when you're able to, like you said, track back the exact pieces of content that these folks were interacting with, and the types of, the web experiences that led to a sale, you could say, oh, 75% of the deals we closed in the last 60 days interacted with this piece of content. Now you know exactly where it's probably worth your time to start focusing, and where you should maybe not focus your time and energy, because it's just not, at the end of the day, paying off.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I suppose speaking of time as a valuable asset, I knew you're going to have to run just a minute, Luke. But I suppose just for one last question, and it was on the element of return on investment. You must have seen, obviously, the differences from companies who have shifted to this kind of growth-driven design strategy as opposed to the traditional. What type of sort of gains have you seen? I mean, is the biggest impact in terms of just more buy-in internally? Have you got specific numbers around maybe improved conversion rates? What sort of things are we sort of seeing to look at?
Yeah, so we have, again, like I said, we have a certification, and that's open to anyone. It just teaches the playbook and teaches about everything in more detail that we've talked about. We also have a certification for agencies. And so we have about 1,000 certified agencies in 50 countries doing growth-driven design, some level of growth-driven design with their clients. We did a survey and we asked them, agencies, you do traditional web design process, you also do GDD, or maybe you used to do one or the other. What are you seeing with your clients? And we had 350 of those agencies fill it out. what we found was that those agencies that use growth-driven design, again, launched the site in 60 days. Of course, that's going to depend on the size of the site and all that. But on average, it was 60 days. It was on time and on budget. And that basically means quicker time to value. You're not stuck in a dungeon paying thousands of dollars for a site or spending so much time and not actually realizing any value. You're getting a quicker time to value. Traditional design, those same agencies reported 108 days, and that the website typically launched 2 weeks late, and that it was basically a set it and forget it. I was actually surprised on the 108 days and 2 weeks late. In my experience, it's usually like 4, 5, 8 months and late. But yeah, that was interesting. The second, probably more impactful thing or more interesting thing that we saw, we asked them, when you do growth-driven design process with a client versus a traditional design process, what were your results 6 months after the site went live? And what we found was that agencies that use growth-driven design reported 16.9% more leads, 11.2% more revenue. And they also had more visitors as well. So like they were generating more leads and more revenue over time using growth-driven design, which kind of makes sense. Like if you're just setting and forgetting a site, like how do you expect it to continuously improve and like grow? But I think at the end of the day, if the reason you have a website is to help your business grow, it becomes a very clear case why using a process like growth-driven design is the clear winner on the approach you should take.
And on that note, we've heard the metrics. I love hearing metrics, and quite frankly, because I've got my sales background in the back of my head, I could talk numbers all day. But look, I really appreciate you coming on today. We've learned a lot. I'll be putting a lot of notes in the follow-up emails here below. So the last thing I'll say is, if anyone wants to reach out to you, how do they find you?
The easiest thing is just on LinkedIn. I don't know. These days, I've just been living on LinkedIn. Haven't really, I kind of don't do a ton on other social media stuff. So LinkedIn's the best, Luke Summerfield. You can get me on there and ask me any questions or if there's anything I can help with. And then, again, you can check out the growth-driven design stuff. If you go to growthdrivendesign.com, you can learn all about there. You can get access to certifications. And then the last piece that, we touched on the shifts happening in technology. The last thing I'll say is about 2 weeks ago, we launched a brand new hub at HubSpot called CMS Hub. And we built that CMS around everything that we've talked about today. And so if any of this is interesting, you're like, what does that mean in terms of a CMS? I would recommend you can search HubSpot CMS or CMS Hub. It'll come up, or go on HubSpot's website and play around with it. We have free trials. We have free developer sandboxes. You can play around with it, see what it's all about. We can talk to your agency about, the work that you've done on it and how you work with it with clients. But if any of that sounds interesting, it's the technology component when you're choosing that. It's definitely something to take a look at.
Yep, and the links will be below as well. Look, right, I'll let you go. I really appreciate your time. It's been great to speak to you, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks so much for having me. Cheers, everyone.